The Doodler by Joan Fitzgerald Denny, illustrated by George Ulrich. Page 3. Mrs. Leyland was talking to her fifth grade class about how to read the daily newspaper. Sam jotted down a few words on his worksheet. Front page, main events. Then a crocodile got in the way. Little by little, the reptile came to life on Sam's worksheet. First the tail and bumpy back, then the toothy jaws, which opened wide to eat the words he had written. Sam was doodling, as usual. He glanced up at Mrs. Leyland, then back to the crocodile. Help was on the way. Here came Newsman. Sam drew a boy with a streaming cape flying down to the rescue. Newsman threw a net over the words. "Take that, crocodile," Sam muttered. But wait, what was that creeping up behind Newsman? Oh no, it was a gigantic octopus. Page 4. Sam? Sam looked up to see Mrs. Leyland staring at him. "I'm not sure you heard what I was telling the class," said Mrs. Leyland. "We were discussing how to find information in newspapers. Can you name the most important parts of a newspaper?" Sam couldn't think of anything to say. He stared at his worksheet, frowning at the crocodile and Newsman, as if they were always getting him into trouble. What were those words inside the net? He squinted at the paper, trying to remember what he had written. Front page, Sam guessed. Good. Any other parts? Irene's hand went up, of course, and she named the headlines, the masthead, the editorial page, and the letters to the editor. Page 5. Sam sighed. Once again, he felt embarrassed and sorry for himself. He should have written careful notes about newspapers. Instead, he had drawn another animal getting ready to eat the few words he had managed to put down. He wished he could pay attention. There was just something about a fresh sheet of paper that brought out the doodles in Sam. During reading, his Venn diagrams turned into soap bubbles. During math, his multiplication grids became big buildings with faces in the windows. During history, snowboarders streaked across his homework sheets and collided with answers to questions about the American Revolution. Sam just couldn't seem to stop drawing. Page 6. At the end of class, Mrs. Leyland stopped Sam as he headed out the door. "Sam," she said, "that was a good crocodile you drew." Sam felt himself blushing. "But I'd like it even better if your drawing didn't keep you from listening." Sam looked at his sneakers. "Sorry, Mrs. Leyland." Mrs. Leyland smiled. "And be careful. If that crocodile ever got loose, think of the trouble it could cause in the classroom." Sam smiled back. He was lucky. Mrs. Leyland wasn't too angry this time. Page 7. The next day, Mrs. Leyland strode into the classroom with a gleam in her eye. Everyone could tell she had a great idea that she wanted to share. "You all know that we have to create a class project for the end of the school year," she said. "Well, now that you know all about newspapers, how about if we publish our own newspaper? I think we have the talent here." The class stared at her for a moment in silence. Then everyone started talking excitedly. Irene's hand shot up. "Does her hand ever stay down?" wondered Sam. "Can I be editor-in-chief, Mrs. Leyland? I know all about newspapers. I read one every day." "Well, it sounds like you're qualified, Irene," Mrs. Leyland replied. "Maybe you would like to have someone help you as a co-editor." Me, yelped Madeline, pointing to herself. "We will also need reporters, editors, layout people, and columnists," said Mrs. Leyland. Page 8. "Colonists?" asked Gregory with a grin. "You mean like the Pilgrims?" The class broke into giggles. Gregory never missed a chance to play with words. Columnists, Gregory. Mrs. Leyland erased some math problems on the board and wrote columnist on it. A columnist writes his or her opinion about something. I've got tons of opinions, said Abby. Jessie asked if she could write a poem, and Mrs. Leyland added literary features to the terms on the board. While kids were raising their hands for jobs, Sam drew a picture of Gregory in a pilgrim's hat. Mrs. Leyland hadn't said anything about needing a doodler. We need a name for the paper, Noah called out. The class drew up a list and voted. The winning name was The Eagle. This pleased everyone except Abby, who said Our Diary was a much better name, and she would write a column to say so. Page 9. Sam sat drawing a picture of an eagle that was arguing with Abby. Suddenly, he heard his name. Sam should do the cartoons, Will said. Sam raised his head in surprise. Everyone was looking at him expectantly. Sam shrugged, looking back at the notebook in front of him. Making doodles was one thing, he thought to himself, but making cartoons for a newspaper? That was serious. Meanwhile, everyone was waiting for him to say something. Okay, he said, I'll give it a try. Page 10. At recess, Sam played goalie against Will's team. Late in the game, Sam leaped to grab a goal away from Will. And the cartoonist makes a beautiful save, hollered Noah. After recess, Irene and Madeline came up to Sam at his locker. Irene was carrying a clipboard. Hi, Sam, she said. It's great that you're drawing the cartoon for the newspaper. Everyone says you're the best artist in class. Sam was surprised. He'd never heard anyone say anything like that. Best boy artist, said Madeline. We all know I'm the best girl artist. You know, Sam said slowly, I've never done a real cartoon before. In fact, I'm not really an artist at all. All I can do is doodle. Wrong, Sam. You're the best, said Irene. Besides, doodles are cartoons. So we're all expecting great things from you. And you'd better deliver. Madeline called back over her shoulder as she and Irene left. Page 11. For homework that night, students had to come up with ideas about how they would do their jobs on the newspaper. Sam began to worry. What could he say about drawing? Drawing was drawing, period. He wondered if he would be better off helping with the layout. He called Noah for advice. No way, said Noah. We're all counting on you. You'll do fine. So Sam sat down at his desk to sketch ideas for a cartoon. What could he draw? He couldn't think of anything. His pen was pressed to the paper, and for the first time ever, nothing came out. No animals, no superheroes, nothing. He couldn't manage a squiggle, much less a doodle, and certainly not a real cartoon. Uh-oh, Sam thought. This means trouble. Page 12. The next day, Sam spoke to Mrs. Leyland. He told her what had happened the night before and said he didn't think he could draw the cartoon. Are you sure, Sam? Miss Leyland asked. You're very talented. I think you could draw something splendid if you gave it a try. Sam shook his head and said nothing. All right. But remember, Sam, Mrs. Leyland said, if you change your mind, you're still welcome to take the cartooning job. Now everyone had a job but Sam. He looked around and saw the others working busily. Editors met with reporters to go over story ideas. Noah and the layout people were cutting and fitting pieces of paper like a puzzle to see how the articles would fit together. It looked like a lot of fun, Sam thought glumly. He glanced over at Irene. Should he change his mind? He felt as if he were letting people down. At dinner that night, Sam's father asked him why he looked so sad. Sam told him about the eagle and what the kids wanted him to do. Great! I'll bet a lot of cartoonists got started by drawing for their school newspapers, said Sam's dad. And a lot of others probably decided not to be cartoonists, said Sam. You know, Sam's dad said thoughtfully, maybe you just need an idea, a kind of spark. He reminded Sam that he knew his classmates very well. Some of them had been with him since kindergarten. How about a big group picture? Maybe you could do a cartoon showing the class doing something together. Doing what? I don't know. It could be anything. Eating lunch, working on the newspaper. Think of it as a photograph, and you're the camera. Sam lay awake that night thinking. As he drifted off to sleep, a picture began to form in his head. It was like a photograph slowly developing. Page 14. Friday morning, Sam woke with the idea for his picture fully developed in his mind. It would be hard, but now Sam was determined to draw it. At school, he borrowed a book on cartooning from the library. Mrs. Leyland passed Sam in the hall and glanced at the book. She gave him an encouraging smile. I'm glad you're back on the staff, Sam, she said. The book showed Sam all sorts of tricks, like how to draw bodies to show movement and how to draw different expressions to show feelings. Sam learned that some cartoonists draw hands with just 4 fingers. He also found out that newspapers have different kinds of cartoons. Serious political cartoons, comic strips that are funny, and comic strips that tell an exciting story. Sam gained confidence as he studied the book. The doodles he had always drawn were almost like cartoons. Maybe he could do this. Over the weekend, he'd try his best. Page 15. Just before he sat down at his desk on Monday morning, Sam quietly slipped his cartoon into Irene's cubby. As the class prepared, the eagle, no one mentioned Sam's cartoon. Once or twice Sam thought he saw an editor smiling at him, but he wasn't sure. Sam nervously began to doodle. Soon he was so busy drawing a giant spider munching an enormous triple-decker submarine with spaghetti and meatballs on the back page of his notebook that he forgot all about being worried. On Wednesday morning, the newspapers had its debut, and a copy lay on each student's desk. In the masthead, at the top of the first page, was the eagle that Madeline had drawn, standing in a flower bed with the name of the paper across its chest. It was very dramatic. Everyone liked it. Below the eagle were 3 news stories. The second page had Jessie's poem and reviews of 2 books and a movie. Columnists appeared on the third page. As expected, Abby had written about why the paper should have been titled Our Diary. Page 16. But the last page amazed everyone. With simple strokes, Sam had drawn each member of the class and Mrs. Leyland at recess as if they were posing for a photograph. They were all doing different things. Gregory, the class clown, was balancing a pencil on his nose. Irene was raising her hand. Abby was standing on a soapbox, delivering a speech. Sam had captured them all perfectly. He had even drawn himself in a corner, doodling. Everyone had fun figuring out who was who. Irene laughed and admitted she did always have her hand up, no matter where she was. A round of applause for the cartoonist, said Gregory, clapping his hands in a circle. Everyone joined in. Sam beamed, enjoying the new feeling of being in the limelight. But soon his mind began to wander. In a few minutes, he was back at his desk, sketching a comic strip for the next issue. In the first panel, a boy who looked a lot like him was sitting at a computer. In the second panel, a giant tentacle came creeping over the keyboard. "Oh no," said the boy. "A gigantic octopus. This looks like a job for a newsman." Sam heard a snicker behind him and looked up. Will and Noah were peering over his shoulder. "Hey, do you mind?" said Sam with a grin. Cartoonist at work. The end.